The Third Side of the Coin, brought to you by Excalibur Coaching and Consulting.
Hello, and welcome to the Third Side of the Coin podcast, episode 3, Fear Inhibits Your Potential. My name is Alex Aberle, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Tim Wong. I'm the president of Excalibur Coaching and Consulting, a leadership and career coaching firm that partners with current and aspiring leaders going through career transition and looking to find ways to build a world of better leadership. My co-host, Tim Wong, is a content curator focusing on the thought leadership for YPO and defining learning themes for programming globally relevant top leadership learning events. He's also an international faculty for the Arts of Living Foundation and the International Association of Human Values. He's been teaching courses since 2003 on consciousness and meditation, specializing in the corporate leadership workshops. Right. So, with the testimonials that I've collected over the last week, and I asked people about the fears that they're facing right now. And specifically, I wanted to know what was their first reaction when they learned about COVID-19, and then whether that fear still exists, given that the situation and circumstances and information is changing. There's a potential that the mindset is also shifting. The first testimonial response that I received came from Ursula Navellino. She is a co-founder of Lawn Care and Weed Control in Portsmouth, Virginia, United States. Spring Green, she is the former first responder, and her husband is a firefighter. So they have quite a different perspective from what I've noticed most people do, at least those who responded to me. And I quote, she said, "My first thought was, oh no, not again. My biggest fear, media hype. I was in the medical field from 1996 through 2012, and I'm well aware of the storm that is made of something that is nuisance. And of course, it's still a concern, partly because I don't think they put out all of the info. If I were to look at it with an open mind, I definitely agree that if you've experienced something before and knowing how media reacts, you certainly can continue that in your memory. Any response to what Ursula is saying?"
Yeah, I think Ursula has some great points. Media hype increases our alertness or our vigilance to potential community issues, but the excessive um, broadcast of sensationalization then stops people from thinking, and that starts pandering towards someone's fear. My experience was when we started seeing the cases in China, and this was like late December when it was started to be reported. For many of us in Hong Kong, we already experienced SARS, and we didn't panic. And part of the reason why we didn't panic was that when SARS happened in Hong Kong, we didn't know how it was transmitted. Neither the health authorities nor the government nor scientists could give a definite response on how it was being spread. And we were seeing apartment blocks being infected, and no one knew how the virus evolved and developed and what were the consequences or the mutations. After SARS, since then, Hong Kong or Asia has the benefit of what prevention actually means. And because of the density in Asia, community communication of disease is much faster because of the density. But then it allows us to also be aware of what prevention means. What we haven't seen in some countries is the mixed messaging. So the communication hasn't been clear. And because the communication hasn't been clear, then the media sensationalizes the issues at hand, and that doesn't help. So it's a lesson for everyone, but at the same time, it comes back to you as an individual. What does prevention mean? And that means, what are you doing to take the active step to not only protect yourself, but also protect people around you.
I'll read one response that I think is in line with what you were saying too. Jeff had said, my first reaction in March was probably the fear of the unknown, meaning there were so many conflicting reports that it was unclear how bad it be done, how it spreads, who is at risk. He continued to say, now my biggest concern is the economic impact going forward for everyone. Millions without jobs, more people will be unemployed. Those with jobs will pay more for goods and services, and the behavioral health of those already suffering, along with children who aren't getting the socialization that they need.
That comment is so interesting because, when you start looking at the basis of fear, fear is half knowledge. I always like to say that it's not full knowledge. What is half knowledge? You know a bit, but you don't know the rest. And so there's a lot of guessing in place then. So it's guessing or speculation, and that creates the fear. If you don't have knowledge of something, you're not going to be scared of it, because when it catches up to you, it'll be too late, you know. But when you have half knowledge or partial knowledge, that's where fear mongering happens. And you're seeing that everywhere. And if you have complete knowledge, then you obviously know how to respond to the situation rather than react. So the difference between responding and reacting is on the spur of the moment. Responding is that you've actually processed it in order to take positive actions.
Mm-hmm. In a couple of cases, the individuals, especially those who work in the medical field, their fear was mostly surrounding what their impact could be. So specifically, one person said, my worst fear was of catching the virus and giving it to my clients as well as to my family, children. Everything that was shown on the news looked terrifying. The fear is still there, just not as intense as it was before. And she said that she was just trying to take all the necessary precautions. And I've noticed the similar responses of people being afraid to actually hurt somebody versus hurting themselves. Are you experiencing the same type of feedback in your interactions with people?
Yeah, it's a sense of responsibility. I mean, hurting people and doing damage to someone, it's two things. One is where you have a sense of responsibility of being a positive contributor to wherever you're in. The other way of not wanting to hurt someone can come also from a very negative space, because you don't want to hurt yourself, or you feel that you're unable to win that situation. It's a bit of a tough question where, am I doing it to preserve my life, or am I doing it for the good of the community? I mean, and can we actually split it like that? So for the medical profession, of course, it's, what they said does make a lot of sense. But for most people out in the community, they feel, or we feel, that putting a mask on prevents us from catching things. But we need to also shift the thinking, is that because the virus itself, we don't know, there's asymptomatic cases, we might be having it. So why don't we put on a mask ourselves to prevent us from spreading it? And that was an attitude I only just recently started picking up. It's, again, a personal shift in your attitude or in your perspective that allows you to see things. And that's the important thing about fear as well. How are you making that shift, or how are you pivoting in order to fully embrace that fear and understand where it's coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying here is not like, if you're fearful of a lion, you just step into the cage and embrace the lion. No, there needs to be a sense of sensibility or practicalities with it as well. Now, I see too many people saying embrace your fear, and they go and do extreme sports and things like that. Is that really embracing your fear? or is it an adrenaline rush?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm not saying that it's not helpful, but at the same time, is it necessary? In my spiritual journey, you have people who believe, and they might be the rebirth of certain great sages or certain great incarnations. They might be, and they will tell that they jumped off 10 floors in order to save humanity and survived, and so therefore I am a reincarnation of a deity because I've survived it, although they were in hospital for 3 months afterwards, recovering, but they did survive it. But my question back to them was, well, was it necessary to jump off the 10 floors in order to save humanity? Why don't you just go and save humanity without jumping off the 10 floors? So equally with your fear, embracing your fear is like, well, just move on. Yes, you're scared of spiders. Fair enough. I'm scared of spiders. If I see a spider, I will move on.
My middle child would appreciate, she already absolutely adores you, and she's also afraid of spiders. Her solution is, Dad, come and kill it. So
yeah, I've now learned to I always have big jars around, just put it in the jar and then release it.
for me, it's snakes. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And I think it's important to actually highlight another response that, or the theme that I've heard from a couple of viewers who actually responded by citing their faith. Some are saying, I don't necessarily have any fear because I believe that God has a plan for everybody, and they use that as their way of not being stuck in fear.
Yes, it's sort of saying, faith is having faith that the unknown will be taken care of, right? And when you're aware of that, then whatever comes, fine. You're able to. The important thing, it's easier, or you bring down the curve of acceptance, right? So it's not tolerance anymore, it's actually acceptance. A lot of people go through fear in tolerating it, right? So tolerating it means, I'm not fully understanding why I hate spiders, but I just hate spiders. Or you could just say, yeah, I just hate spiders, I've accepted it, and I'm being able to move on. So you save your own peace of mind. So yes, faith is also very important if it works for you, but it's also important to understand that the life given to you by a higher being or consciousness, whatever, is so precious. And you yourself also need to take the steps to help yourself as well. Fear sometimes drives us into a space of being either a culprit or the victim. And that doesn't help you at all. So in order to make fear work for you, you need to take the responsibility to take action for it. Action as in, how do you respond to it? And that is a learning process. That's how we evolve as individuals. If we just think about the first time you ordered your first meal, right? Mum used to always order for me, right? And it was either spaghetti bolognese or chicken a la king. It was either or, always like that. Yep. And or French onion soup. Those are the three things that were allowed to eat. But then I think I was 7 or 8. We were at a restaurant, and then Mum said, "Okay, you order yourself." And there was so much I didn't know. But then when I ordered, it was either spaghetti bolognese or chicken a la king. Anyway, I felt like, wow, I've learned something about myself that I can do it. But at first it was fearful because Mum's always done it for me. So when you start looking at that, then fear is the lack of self-knowledge.
In our second episode, we'll get into a couple of practical tips or exercises that you can get involved with to overcome or accept the fear. So thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode.
Now go to part 2.